host, Chris Budihas. Today's segment is brought to you by Operation Barnabas. Today I have in the studio Micah Chapman from Austin Commercial. Micah, how are you doing?
I'm great, sir. Thanks for having me on today. It's nice to join you guys.
Nah, it's good to see you again. Mike and I have known each other for a number of years, and he's just a great American. So, hey, Micah, where are you from? What you do in the Army? And more importantly, how's that transition been? And what do you got any advice for those in the military that'll transition and they're planning how they should look to the future based on your success and the job you landed there with Austin Commercial?
Sure. I grew up in a small town here in Florida called Avon Park. I spent 21 and a half years in the United States Army as an infantry officer. Transitioned late last fall in my retirement life. I'm now a superintendent working for Austin Commercial here in Orlando, Florida, or at least our regional headquarters is based out of Orlando, Florida. In that capacity, we work across a wide variety in the commercial space, from healthcare to entertainment to aviation. Do a little road and bridge. We even do some stuff out in the space sector. And so I transitioned last fall. About a year out from that transition, I kind of started my detailed planning towards my retirement. One of the critical components that I learned along the way was to reach out early and often to peers of mine, both ones who had served in the military and left early, and ones who had retired after a complete 20 plus year military service, and seek their advice in terms of why they chose the career paths that they chose post-military, the kind of job satisfaction they were getting out of that, and advice they had for me in terms of struggles they had, things they learned along the way, and advice that I thought would be useful. And so I captured that, and then as I started to narrow my list down to things that I thought interested me most, I linked that a little bit to the people that I knew, how their personalities aligned with mine, and things that I thought I would be interested in. One of the critical components for me is I really wanted to go. I loved the time that I spent in the military, but I wanted to go in a completely different direction and work outside the Department of Defense. So I didn't want to be a contractor. I didn't want to be a GS employee. I just wanted to try something entirely new and different. And so that's how I kind of started going in this direction of commercial construction. A couple of my peers that I respected a lot, former infantry officers as well, kind of guided me in this direction, and they became excellent springboards for me in terms of advice. When I started to work on my civilian resume, which looked nothing like my military resume, they were great resources for that as well. And then as I started to go into the interviewing process to seek out opportunities for employers, they kind of helped me along in that sense as well. And so I was able to I interviewed with Austin Commercial last January. I think is when I had my first interview with them. And then I came down in person in February, March time frame. And I was really in kind of a fortunate position to be in, where I had a company lined up that I was going to go work for post-military that was also flexible enough to work with me along my transition timeline to allow me to kind of seamlessly go out of the military, make my final PCS move, if you will, settle in a little bit, and then show up at my new job. And it's been really good for me here.
It's great, man. Listening to you, I mean, it's obvious in the military we have good planning tools, and you definitely use them, specifically that visualization of what you thought you wanted to do, and then really going into detailed planning and kind of doing your homework to go, this is what I want to do, and more importantly, this is what I don't want to do, as you take a look at a post-military career. And then what I also heard, which is really important, I've talked to a couple other folks about, is your willingness to reach out to folks and get mentorship, and then get steerage into where you went. And as I mentioned to a couple folks recently on a podcast, I heard 73% of veterans will change job with the first company they come out of the uniform with within the first 3 years. And I think it's powerful that you really did all that upfront homework to land where you did, and you feel like you've been placed in the right job with the right type of company to be successful.
It absolutely takes a lot of, I think, work on the individual's part to clearly figure out what you want to do and then pursue that. One of the important pieces of advice I got early on from a mentor of mine who is also now a retired general officer, he said, we take for granted in the military that we build ourselves on this career and this title of being a professional, combat arms officer. But then we take for granted when we go into the military sector or into the civilian sector, how quickly we become labeled. And it's interesting that you mentioned that kind of 3-year time frame, because very rapidly you stop being a retired military officer and you start being, in my case, a superintendent. And so civilians are going to see me as a superintendent in the very near future. So if I've chosen poorly, I'll be labeled as a superintendent, not as a retired Army officer. So I do think that it really matters that you spend the time to do the research, to talk to people, and really kind of canvas the civilian workspace to see what are the things that interest in you, or draw your interest, because it's a critical component that you're going to spend another 20 plus or more years potentially in that new career field. Even if you maybe change companies, hopefully you'll find something that you like, settle on that, and make the best adventure out of it.
That's awesome. Hey, Micah, number one, thanks for your service. Number two, thanks for your friendship. I appreciate you coming on this episode to talk about your experience and what you've done so others can learn through that experience that you just had. And you gave them some great planning tools that, oh, by the way, they learned in the military, and they just got to apply them to their own personal situation. So, hey, folks, today's episode is brought to you by Operation Barnabas over there in Clay County. Take a look at what they're doing at operationbarnabas.com. If you feel compelled, please give to them. They're helping veterans get a hand up, not a hand out, which is a great model. If you're interested in what's going on here, continue to watch our episodes. Check me out on LinkedIn. I love to correspond with you. Thanks again, Micah.
Operation Barnabas is a veterans ministry, started in 2017 with the purpose of helping our veterans that kind of got left behind.
These people went over and went to war for us, and a lot of their friends didn't come back, and that's a lot of the stuff that we as veterans deal with is there's a lot of people that didn't make it back, and then it's like, why are we here? So and then they isolate.
And they've struggled with addictions, PTSD, suicidal thoughts, those kind of things, helping them get whole again through one-to-one mentorship.
So being able to communicate with them and help them can drastically change their life, can drastically change a family's life. The little that we can do is put our hand out and say, hey, do you want a hand up? Like, we're not giving a hand out. Do you want a hand up? And just be able to be there with them and do life with them and just be able to help them, because, man, they put their life on the line for you and me.